All right, everybody. We had an interesting week in IndyCar this week. IndyCar was at Detroit for the Grand Prix, Chevrolet Grand Prix, I think, and it was a complete mess. So we're going to talk about it here on Push to Pass. All right, first things first, thanks to both of you tuned into the Indy 500 podcast. I say that jokingly. If you are interested in the Indy 500 podcast, me and Big Motor Small Blades buddy, we went over the events of the Indy 500, talked about Kyle Larson, had a fun time. I would check it out if I were you. I enjoyed it. But anyway, speaking of Kyle Larson, we will briefly talk about Kyle Larson since today in the morning at, I think, 10:30. Yesterday, you're watching this on Wednesday. NASCAR finally gave Kyle Larson a waiver. Obviously, if you've been living under a rock, he missed the Coca-Cola 600 to run the Indianapolis 500. I think he made the right choice, and now he's gotten a waiver, so I think there's no argument. He definitely made the right choice. So anyway, happy to hear that. Now, let's get on to the complete mess that was Detroit. All right, I'm not even really going to break this down like I'd have the other races this season. I don't see the point. The whole race was, or half the race, it feels like was a caution lap. The other half of it was setting up a caution. The driving standards were absolutely atrocious. There was none. The track design, what's funny is Detroit is one of those tracks where I really like the setup of it by itself. I really think it's a fun track to watch qualifying for. Maybe not when everyone's out at the same exact time going. So maybe like fast 12, fast 6 kind of stuff. I think that's a lot of fun. It's technical when it needs to be. It's flat out when it needs, it's got some, you can build some speed up when you need to. I think it's a fun track. It's just not conducive to good auto racing. And I don't know. I think they proved that. Obviously, the drivers could have helped out the situation a little bit by not being absolute maniacs. But I think if you have that, then you have the opposite problem of not much happening, which, take it or leave it. You want there to be some interesting things happening in your auto race, obviously, but you really don't want to see what we saw on Sunday. It was a complete mess. It made the race, the drivers of the IndyCar series look like idiots, which is unfortunate, especially a week after you had probably one of the best Indy 500s in this era of this car, this kit. It's really unfortunate. And obviously if you know what you're looking at, you can tell it's a totally different scenario, totally different situation. But I mean, if you did have some casual, maybe interested in watching Detroit after the Indianapolis 500, then they're going to watch this and go, wow, these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. Like they're not going to think that they know what they're doing. They're going to think, oh, they just know how to turn left. They just know how to do this or that or the other, which is obviously not true, but it definitely appeared that way. If I'd never watched an IndyCar race outside of the Indy 500 before Sunday, I would have left thinking, God, these guys suck. Like I hate to say it, it would not be hard to take away from that there's a reason these guys are not in F1. And obviously, I don't agree with that statement. The reason a lot of these guys aren't in F1 is A, some of them don't want to be, but B, obviously you need money to go F1 racing, a lot of it, and obviously, but that is the perception of IndyCar. It's unfortunate. It's not warranted, but that is the perception of IndyCar, and putting on a race like that just proves it. And I think if it didn't happen, I feel like it happens more often now than it used to, for sure. I remember when I started watching IndyCar, I think the first time I ever saw something like this was the NOLA Grand Prix in 2015. And that at least had the adage of the wet weather, just plaguing it the entire time. They absolutely should have just, dried off the last corner there, and that race probably would have been okay. And they didn't do that, and that race was a complete mess, and IndyCar never went back to NOLA. But yeah, I don't know. We have one or two of these a year now, it feels like. The Nashville Grand Prix was pretty sure every year was like this. Obviously, this year will be different since it's on the oval. But Nashville's been like this for a while. I feel like none of the traditional street courses that we've been going to for a long time, Long Beach, Toronto, Belle Isle never turned into this. It's just it's specifically these newer street courses, really. And it's unfortunate because it's good to bring new street courses along, get people in. Obviously, I feel like people in Detroit probably knew that there was IndyCar racing going on 20 minutes away. I'm not exactly sure. I've never been to Belle Isle. I always wanted to go to Belle Isle, but it's always the week after the Indy 500. And if I lived up there, sure, that'd be great. But no, unfortunately, I do not live up there. I don't live near any IndyCar racing. I think the closest track to me is probably Barber, which I need to go to Barber at some point. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The race was disappointing, and hopefully we don't have anything else like that this season. Scott Dixon obviously won the race. I say obviously. Yeah, obviously. It was a fuel mileage race. Of course Scott Dixon won the race. Again, we start to watch a Scott Dixon race or a race that turns into fuel mileage, and the question always comes up, can he make it? Like, dude, I'd be shocked if he didn't make it, and if he didn't make it, I would assume something went wrong. Like, there's no way Scott Dixon accidentally ran out of fuel by his own doing. Like, it would have had to have been something else going wrong for Scott Dixon to run out of fuel. I feel like, I mean, I can't think of a time it happened. I would have to Google it. I'm sure there's probably a time, but yeah, I don't know when that would have been. But yeah, Scott Dixon, of course, he picks up his 58th career win in a complete mess of a race. Of course, everyone else makes mistakes, and Scott Dixon just says, all right, cool. Just going to stay up here at the front, save fuel, and I'm going to win this race. All right, really, really quickly, we're going to go through the heavy hitters of the point standings currently. Scott Dixon leads. Alex Plo's trailing by about 18 points. Will Power behind him. Pato O'Ward in 4th. Alexander Rossi in 5th. Alex is putting a quiet year together, but a solid year, in fact. Kyle Kirkwood, he's run really good this season. Colton Herta's been disappointing to me. Obviously, Scott McLaughlin had a rough start to the season, but he's in 8th. Felix Rosenquist's in 9th, who's actually done a really good job this season. Joseph Newgarden is 10th now after winning the Indy 500 and having a really unfortunate race for him. Lastly, did want to point out Tom Blomqvist is 26th in points, and he's been benched for the rest of the season. I said if you would like to go back and listen, I said in the Indy 500 podcast that Tom Blomqvist had done nothing for me this season. And it sounds like I wasn't the only one because they replaced him this weekend with Elio Castroneves. There's no saying who is going to be the more permanent replacement for him, but currently it is Elio Castroneves, at least for the next race or two. I'd have to double check that. And then we'll have to see who maybe they might get for that. Maybe David Malukas, if he's healthy. That'd be cool. But yeah, Tom, unfortunately, is not cutting it in IndyCar. It happens. It is what it is. It doesn't always work out for everybody. The situations are weird. Sometimes it's just not the right fit, not the right time. So hopefully, I'm sure he'll land back on his feet somewhere, or he'll probably end up back in sports cars, is my guess. All right. That's pretty much it for this one. A little low on the information side, but I didn't have a whole lot to say about this race. It was a complete mess. Hopefully we don't see it again this season. Hopefully we don't see it again for a couple seasons. It's okay every now and again. And by every now and again, I mean like every 3 or 4 years. It's not great a couple times a season. I'm not a big fan of it. It feels very NASCAR to me. And I really don't want to watch a NASCAR race when I'm watching an IndyCar race. I suffered through enough NASCAR racing. So anyway, if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, consider leaving a like if you'd like. We do this on this channel. We do our NASCAR show, the Big Motor Small Blade podcast. If you'd like to suffer through NASCAR with us, if you'd like to watch some content about the Cars Tour and other local grassroots late model racing, you can watch that. And of course, our New Zealand and Australian followers, you can watch the rundown from Down Under, and which y'all seem to really like. So keep keep engaging with that. We love it, and we're happy to have you. So anyway, we'll see you next time.